Welcome everyone, Mark Thomas. You know I love my COBIT framework and I love problem management. This is the process of proactively and reactively identifying trends, looking for root causes of incidents, initiating those actions to implement, say, workarounds or final resolutions, and preventing incidents from happening in the future. Problem management differs from, say, incident management in that I love this cartoon. If you'll check this out, after years of research, humans believe they've discovered the reason or the root cause for wildfires and are committed to fixing this. And they found these animals sitting around drinking, causing fires. Well, you know, this is very representative of how some organizations look. Let's see what we're going to learn here. Objective number one, we'll recognize the key terms and aspects of problem management and how it benefits the organization. Our second objective is to recall the problem management process and gain tips and tricks on how to adopt these in your organization today. And then finally, we'll identify key control objectives for problem management and know where to find these in the COBIT framework. Stick around. Here's what we're going to talk about in this course. We'll start with why problem management exists and disruption to my user and customer consumption of their services. Here's a little story for you here. Let's take a look. You've got Jonathan here. Jonathan is the Chief Technology Officer of a managed service provider. And he says, can somebody please help me? Why do we keep seeing increased incidents and they're the same category? What can we do to address this? Well, he has a problem manager. Before we go too far, I think it makes sense to talk about a few key terms around problem management. Some that I think are important, of course, are incidents. What is an incident? Earlier about that crack. Remember, I've got a crack down there somewhere, and there's smoke coming out of it, and those are my incidents. So I want to find where that smoke is coming from, close that crack so that I don't have those incidents anymore. But what that crack is doing is creating issues and is creating friction with my user, my customer community. Find that crack, and then fix that crack before that small crack becomes a big one. That's what contract violation. Those could be all reactive. How do we identify potential proactive problem tickets? Well, things like decreased performance, continual improvement areas, and to avoid an incident. Now, let's look at more reasons why you need problem management. So one of the things I wanted to choose here was called a balanced scorecard. A balanced scorecard is often used in translating. Well, let's take a look a little bit from each one of these perspectives to help us out. Well, first, we have the financial perspective. Again, this is the dollars, the figures, right? XY axis. We're going to see this evolution of tickets over time. And what you'll see is the red line talks about recurring issues. Those may be incidents. Notice they're going down. The correlation we want to make is as we increase our problem ticket closure, meaning. All right, let's jump into the process of problem management and take a look at what the general steps are. Now, this is my version of what problem management looks like. We'll talk a little bit later about other frameworks like COBIT. We want to see what each one of these steps does for us and some of the key things for each one of these areas. Now, first, we have to be able to identify problems. I would expect that the most popular and well-known way of identifying problem tickets is through, say, incident tickets. By the way, this is one of the reasons why we categorize incident tickets, so we can look at, for example, a managed service provider falls victim to a major ransomware attack. I would say it's a good idea to understand the root cause and try to reduce the likelihood and the impact of those major incidents coming up. Again, projects. All right, we've got our team. We need to do our investigation and diagnosis. This is root cause analysis. Of course, we want to try to create that known error record as soon as we can, even though we don't have the solution yet, or we don't know if we need a workaround yet, and how we might determine our solution. Once we've found the root cause, or the most probable root cause, we need to have a solution for this. And that solution, some key things have to be met. Number one, is it within my financial means? Do we have a business case, those known error records? And of course, make sure the knowledge we've learned is incorporated into a service review meeting with a business customer, especially if they're affected by this. And finally, we want to monitor and measure. What we're saying here is how successful. Let's face it, sometimes you cannot come up with a solution in a timely manner. Sometimes you can't come up with that solution within the financial means that you need, and you have to have a temporary fix. That's when we take those known errors and we now apply workarounds to them. So let's take that step where we determine a solution. What happens if you can't find a solution for this? Well, if you can't find that solution, then what we've got to do is to break that out and now come up with some kind of temporary fix while we're trying to get that final solution in place. I really like how that process comes together. So here's an example of how that would play out. So, oops, we don't want the cat. Let's see. Well, we want that guy. That looks a little bit better. So what we've got here on the left-hand side, this is Rose over in accounting. Hey, I can't seem to get the invoicing module to upload the correct contract data. Can you help me? Over on the service desk, we say, yeah, no problem, Rose. I've given you some of my perspective on problem management, but it's time to jump in and take a look at one of the popular frameworks, and you know I'm going to pick COBIT to give you this information. As you probably recognize, this is the full list of all of the governance and management objectives in the COBIT 2019 framework. One of those areas right here, DSS03, is called Managed Problems. Inside of COBIT, it takes this objective and it breaks it down into what are called components. If you're trying to find where this information comes from, it's going to come from what I call the Objectives Guide or the Governance and Management Objectives Guide. You can get that on ISACA.org, and ISACA has multiple COBIT-related documents that you can look into to find more information on this. We talked about those in an earlier module. All this information I'm going to provide to you in a download that comes with this course. Enough slides. Let me jump into the actual COBIT framework and show you what it looks like in the live document. Okay, I jumped right down into DSS03, Managed Problems, in the COBIT 2019 Governance and Management Objectives Guide. Some things you'll see here, it's under the domain called Deliver, Service and Support right here, DSS03 Managed Problems. It's in the focus area called. Then we resolve and we close those problems. Again, we see our example metrics, our activities here, and the different capability levels. Look at this. There's a couple of them that get really intense on the level 4 and 5, like monitoring the impacts of problems. That was a very quick view of managed problems in COBIT. I would suggest you grab a copy of this and spend some time looking at it, because I can guarantee. How do you take things out of a document and make them real? One of the big challenges with any framework and a lot of organizations is they just want to copy what's in a framework and paste it into their organization, and somehow it's magically going to work. This doesn't happen. So let me give you a couple tips for my practical advice on how to make this work for your organization. Management, I've got a little bit on measurement coming up here in just a few slides. Now this slide here I'm not going to go over in detail. We know why problem management exists. We've understood the process. We know what workarounds and known errors. We know what COBIT says. And we've had some of my advice. How do you measure problem management? Key thing here, right? So we need to have a way in which we can, to the left of it and maybe to the right of it, you want to be able to compare those numbers. So a metric is a measurement. A key performance indicator takes multiple measurements and now shows me that trend. That's why it's a performance. Where most people, I think, really mess this up is they do what these folks did. So what you'll see here is this gentleman reporting. I did give you some of my practical advice earlier, but I wanted to streamline that down into what I always like to do at every one of my courses, give you some of my top tips and tricks. Number one, you got to have a policy or potential cracks before they get too big. That is the goal. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your kind attention. Make sure you go out for the course Q&A. If you enjoyed the course, please feel free to give me a rating and some feedback on this course. We'll see you in the Q&A.